Nostradamus's final prediction for 2025 has left scientists terrified. Before your next notification buzzes, consider this. A forgotten line written centuries ago may already know where our world is headed. The year 2025 looms on the horizon, not just as another number on the calendar, but as a crossroads of climate instability, political unrest, and breakthroughs in AI that blur the line between human and machine. But what if someone saw it all coming back in the 1500s? Yes. Nostradamus, the elusive French mystic whose cryptic verses have haunted historians and intrigued skeptics alike, may have left behind one final chilling message about our time. A prophecy so precise, it's forcing scientists and researchers to pause and rethink everything they thought they knew. Before we peel back the layers of mystery, take a moment. Like this video, share it with a seeker of truth, and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom, where we connect the echoes of the past with the uncertainties of today. Because what we uncover next may not just change how you see the future, but how you live right now. Number 1. Solar Catastrophe. In Century 4, Quatrain 30, Nostradamus describes something that at first seems poetic and abstract, a fiery beach. But when we bring this vision into the present day, his words begin to echo with eerie relevance. With the ongoing advancement of space science and our increasing dependence on fragile digital infrastructure, the possibility of a massive solar flare doesn't sound like fiction. It feels like an impending reality. Solar storms, or what scientists call coronal mass ejections, are enormous bursts of charged particles from the sun that can collide with Earth's magnetic field, unleashing geomagnetic chaos. NASA's Parker Solar Probe, which has been studying the sun up close, has captured data on these enormous solar eruptions that race across space at millions of miles per hour. And while it may seem like the stuff of science fiction, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, released a report in 2024 warning that a single X-class flare, one of the most powerful types, could cause more than $2 trillion in economic damage. That kind of disruption could impact everything from satellite communication and GPS navigation to power grids and water purification systems. We're talking about the kind of global paralysis that would ripple through hospitals, transportation networks, and even our food supply chains. Suddenly, the metaphor of a fiery beach transforms from poetic imagery into a possible metaphor for a scorched earth. Where coastal cities lose power, the seas heat up just enough to disrupt delicate ecosystems, and marine life faces irreversible collapse. Coral reefs, already under stress from climate change, could be wiped out entirely by rising ocean temperatures or solar-induced shifts in ocean chemistry. And in a deeply interconnected world where billions rely on digital infrastructure for daily survival, whether it's financial transactions, communication, or simply accessing clean water, a geomagnetic storm of this scale would remind us how vulnerable we really are. Nostradamus might not have had the vocabulary of modern physics, but the symbolic weight of his warning still resonates across centuries. What does this mean for us now, living in a world of smartphones, satellites, and streaming services? It means we can no longer afford to see space weather as a distant, irrelevant concept. It's real, it's being monitored, and it requires preparation. The truth is, while governments and agencies like NASA are working on early warning systems and grid protections, each of us can begin thinking about resilience in our own lives. Do we have backup ways to communicate if digital networks go down? Are our homes prepared for temporary blackouts? Do we understand the basic principles of sustainability, not just in terms of the environment, but in terms of energy, food, and community interdependence? This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Nostradamus may have been vague, but that doesn't make his visions any less valuable in sparking modern reflection. His language forces us to pause and consider our relationship with nature, with technology, and with each other. Are we building a society that can adapt and endure? Or are we racing forward without checking the foundations beneath our feet? In Buddhist philosophy, impermanence is a core truth. Nothing stays the same and all things are subject to change. The sun in its brilliance gives us life, but even it can remind us of our limits. If we learn to live more simply, stay grounded, and remain mindful of our dependencies, then perhaps warnings like these become less about doom and more about direction. In the end, the greatest wisdom we can gain may not come from the stars, but from how we choose to respond here on Earth. Number 2. Zombie viruses. In the deep north, dormant plague will emerge, new terror hidden by the ancient cold. These haunting words from Nostradamus's Century 1, Quatrain 64, seem to echo more urgently now than ever before. You and I are living in a time when science is rapidly catching up with prophecy, and one chilling discovery has brought this centuries-old verse to life. In 2023, a team of scientists uncovered 13 so-called zombie viruses buried deep beneath the Siberian permafrost. Viruses that had been frozen for up to 40,000 years, and astonishingly, some were still infectious. What does this mean for us? The frozen north, once a crypt for ancient pathogens, is thawing. As climate change accelerates, it's not just ice that's melting. It's Pandora's box being pried open by rising global temperatures. The Pasteur Institute has projected that by 2025, the relentless thawing of the Arctic tundra could unseal millions of cubic kilometers of once trapped microorganisms. Think about that for a moment. These ancient viruses, bacteria, and potential plagues were locked away long before modern medicine existed, before humans even understood the concept of germs. If they begin to awaken, are we prepared for what they could bring? This isn't the plot of a sci-fi movie or a distant hypothetical. It's happening now. And it's not just about infection. Many of these microbes have never encountered the human immune system before, and our modern medicines may not be ready to face them. Could this be the new terror Nostradamus spoke of? One that creeps not through war or politics, but through biology, invisibly spreading from the earth itself? Now, you might wonder, how could someone from the 16th century possibly predict something like this? Nostradamus often used metaphor, but many believe his writings carried deeper truths, warnings buried in cryptic poetry. Dormant plague, hidden by the ancient cold. It sounds poetic, yes, but it also feels uncomfortably literal in our present reality. Are we so certain that our advanced world is immune to ancient forces? As ice melts, so too does the boundary between the past and the present. And just as history teaches us that humanity has survived plagues before, it also warns us that arrogance and unpreparedness have cost us dearly. What can we do in the face of such revelations? First, we must ask ourselves, how much do we really know about the world beneath our feet? About the invisible legacies left behind by nature and time? And more importantly, how do we respond to warnings, whether they come from ancient texts or modern science? You see, whether you believe Nostradamus truly foresaw our future or not, his verses serve as a powerful metaphor for the consequences of ignoring what lies buried, whether in nature or in ourselves. Are we listening to the signs, or brushing them aside until it's too late. So here's the deeper lesson. In life, just like with permafrost, things we bury don't always stay hidden. Climate change isn't just about weather, it's about what the changing Earth may reveal. And as this prophecy suggests, our greatest threats may not come from what's new, but from what we thought was gone. Stay informed, stay aware, and above all, stay humble in the face of nature's vast, ancient memory. Because the past is never truly dead, it's just waiting to be uncovered. What will we do when it returns? Number 3. Geologic fracture and global divide. Let me take you on a journey that blends ancient prophecy, modern science, and the spiritual questions that lie between the cracks, both literal and symbolic. Nostradamus once wrote in Century 6, Quatrain 97, "Two brothers divided, a new land will arise, the old city will see its strength fall." Now, I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, what did he really mean by this? Could he have foreseen our present time, when geologists are observing the mid-Atlantic ridge splitting at an accelerated? Deep beneath the icy waters of the Atlantic Ocean, something powerful is shifting. The Earth's crust is pulling apart, sending tremors not only through the ocean floor but through our understanding of stability itself. If this continues, and Iceland erupts with the same force it did in 1783, we won't just be facing an environmental event. We could be witnessing the kind of chaos that once blanketed Europe in ash, dimmed the skies, led to widespread famine, and even contributed to the fall of empires. The European Space Agency's simulations show ash spreading across northern Europe, reaching cities like Copenhagen and London, historical capitals, power centers of the old world. Could these be the old cities losing their strength, just as Nostradamus described? And more deeply, could the two brothers divided refer not only to the physical rift beneath the sea, but also to the social and political rifts growing between nations, between ideologies, even between us as individuals? Think about it. Are we now seeing the rise of a new land? Not just geologically, but symbolically. Perhaps it's a new global order being born out of division and instability, a world where the old ways of control, power, and dominance no longer work. Could this be an invitation for humanity to look beyond physical boundaries and toward a deeper kind of unity? When the earth shakes, it humbles us. It reminds us that we are guests here, not masters. And in Buddhism, the teaching is clear. All compounded things are impermanent. This isn't just about volcanoes or tectonic plates. It's a spiritual mirror reflecting our tendency to cling to what is familiar, even when everything around us is changing. When structures we trust begin to crumble, whether they're cities, governments, or beliefs, we often respond with fear or denial. But what if we looked at this differently? What if, like the monk Thich Nhat Hanh once said, it's not impermanence that makes us suffer, it's our desire for things to be permanent. Maybe this global divide is offering us a sacred pause, a call to re-examine our connection to the earth and to each other. So I ask you, what are the old cities in your life that are beginning to lose strength? Is there a belief, a relationship, or even a worldview that no longer serves you? And more importantly, what new land is quietly rising beneath your feet? Because even in the face of natural disasters and uncertain futures, we are still creators of meaning. Nostradamus may have warned us, but he also offered a choice. Through awareness, reflection, and unity, we can choose how we respond to these shifts. We can panic, or we can prepare. We can divide further, or we can begin to bridge. The fracture may be real, but so is the chance for renewal. As the earth trembles, let us not just watch with fear, but listen with compassion and wisdom. In this moment, ask yourself, not just what might break, but what might be born. If you've watched this far, you're already diving deep into the mysteries that may shape our future. Comment below with "Future Unfolding" to show you're ready to face what lies ahead. Don't click away just yet. There's still more to uncover about Nostradamus's chilling vision for 2025. Stay with us to the end and see why scientists are sounding the alarm. Number 4. Aircraft chaos from the sky. Let's reflect together on a chilling line from Nostradamus, written centuries ago in Century 2, Quatrain 40. The birds of steel will fall at noon. Fire from the sky will cause great suffering. At first glance, this may sound like poetry or metaphor, but for those of us living in an age where the sky is filled with aircraft, commercial planes, satellites, drones, this prediction strikes a little closer to home. The phrase, "birds of steel," resonates strongly with today's airplanes, and it brings into sharp focus a growing concern that scientists and engineers are now beginning to speak about more openly: solar storms. You see, in 2025, solar cycle 25 is expected to reach its peak, and that means an increased risk of intense solar activity. Bursts of radiation and magnetic energy from the sun, known as solar flares or coronal mass ejections. These flares are not just spectacular celestial displays. They have very real, very dangerous consequences for our modern technology. Back in 2003, during the notorious Halloween storms, solar radiation disrupted radio communications and GPS systems so severely that numerous flights had to be rerouted. Some lost communication entirely. And those storms weren't even close to the intensity experts are warning us about in the near future. What's even more concerning is that the aviation industry is fully aware of these vulnerabilities. In fact, Boeing released a white paper in 2024 that didn't mince words. It warned that aging avionics in many aircraft models, especially those still using older electronic systems, are highly susceptible to electromagnetic interference from solar storms. These aren't science fiction theories. They're technical risks outlined by one of the world's leading aerospace manufacturers. The idea that passenger jets, filled with families, professionals, and everyday people, could be caught mid-flight in an atmosphere charged with electromagnetic chaos isn't far-fetched anymore. And when Nostradamus spoke of fire from the sky, could it be that he sensed a time when invisible forces, not just lightning or war, would rain danger upon us from above? Solar plasma, unlike fire as we know it, doesn't burn with flames. It disrupts, disables, and destroys circuits, communications, and guidance systems. Now here's where it ties into our everyday lives. For those of us between 30 and 65, we've seen how rapidly our world has changed. We remember a time before the internet, before cell phones were in every pocket, and when flying felt like an extraordinary luxury, not a common mode of travel. But with progress comes complexity, and with complexity comes fragility. Our systems, technological, economic, even personal, are interconnected in ways our ancestors never imagined. So the question is not just whether Nostradamus was right. The question is, are we ready? Not only in the technological sense, but emotionally and mentally. Are we prepared for disruptions, for the unpredictability of nature, for the moments when control slips from our hands? In Buddhist philosophy, we are reminded, "Bo, that arises, passes away. Cling not to what is fleeting." That teaching is especially relevant in this age, where we place so much trust in the machines above us and the digital lifelines around us. Perhaps this prophecy is less about predicting doom and more about inviting awareness, about encouraging us to live more mindfully, to prepare wisely, and to reconnect with a deeper truth, that the sky we fly through isn't just airspace. It's a realm shaped by forces beyond our control. So, as we continue to rely on technology, let's also remember to ground ourselves in wisdom, humility, and the understanding that even the most advanced steel bird is still subject to the sky's ancient power. Number 5. Rising seas, displacing the river. Let's take a moment to reflect on a striking prophecy from Century 3, Quatrain 25, where Nostradamus writes, "The water will rise to the high place, the great will be forced to leave their homes." At first glance, this sounds like just another poetic warning from centuries past. But when we look at the state of our world today, especially in the face of rising sea levels, it feels hauntingly real. Scientists project that by 2025, sea levels could climb by another 0.23 meters, and while that number might seem small, its impact is anything but. Combine that rise with seasonal king tides, and you have coastal cities like Miami already experiencing what's called sunny day flooding, when ocean water surges into streets and homes even without a drop of rain. Streets glisten under clear skies, but the water isn't a blessing. It's salt water, eating away at infrastructure, foundations, and the illusion of permanence. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has stated this trend is inevitable, not speculative, and financial institutions like JP Morgan are sounding the alarm, warning that over $1 trillion in real estate may be submerged or severely devalued in the coming years. And here's where the prophecy hits even harder. Nostradamus didn't just say people would be displaced. He said the great would be forced to leave. Think about that. This isn't about the vulnerable alone being pushed out. It's about the billionaires in their oceanfront mansions, the tech moguls in smart homes perched along coastal cliffs, and the politicians who once legislated from cities built on waterfront dreams, all of them potentially facing the same fate as those without power or wealth. Now, let me share a short story with you. Just last year, a hedge fund manager who owned a luxurious estate in Palm Beach quietly sold his home and relocated inland. He didn't make headlines, but the move was deliberate and revealing. The sea walls around his property were no longer enough. Quietly, behind closed doors, many of the so-called untouchables are planning their retreats. So the question isn't just whether the seas are rising, they are, but whether we're paying attention to who is running from the water and why. In a world where we've long assumed that wealth can insulate us from disaster, we are starting to see that nature is the great equalizer. Are we willing to see that lesson for what it is? In Buddhist thought, impermanence is one of the most fundamental truths. We're reminded that nothing, no matter how solid or grand, is immune to change. The Buddha taught, all conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence. So, as cities sink and the rich retreat, perhaps this is a deeper invitation for all of us, not just to build higher walls, but to build deeper wisdom. Are we prepared to adapt, not just structurally, but spiritually? Are we clinging to places, possessions, and privilege, or are we learning to move with the flow of change? The lesson here is powerful. No matter your status or fortune, no one is above nature. What matters now is how we respond, with fear or with mindful action. So I leave you with this question. In the rising tide of life's challenges, what are you holding on to, and what are you willing to let go of, so you don't drown in the illusion of permanence? Number 6. Artificial Intelligence Judgment Day. Let's take a deep breath and reflect on this chilling verse from Century 8, Quatrain 3, where Nostradamus writes, "In the clear glass the bodiless spirit will see everything. It will judge kings and peoples with cold steel." At first glance it sounds poetic, even mythical, but when viewed through the lens of our rapidly advancing world, it suddenly feels disturbingly real. The clear glass could very well be the screens we now stare into every day, our phones, computers, smart devices, while the bodiless spirit unmistakably evokes artificial intelligence, the disembodied intellect now shaping everything from our daily routines to global policy decisions. As we look toward 2025, the European Union is preparing to roll out the world's first binding legal framework to govern general-purpose AI, a move that underscores just how real the stakes have become. We're no longer dealing with hypothetical ideas. This is our reality. DeepMind, one of the most influential AI research labs in the world, has already warned that artificial general intelligence, AGI, that can think and make decisions across all fields like a human, poses a catastrophic risk to humanity if left unchecked. Predictive policing algorithms are being used to determine who is likely to commit crimes. Autonomous drones can carry out military actions without human oversight, and governments around the world are increasingly relying on machine learning models to make critical decisions. So, when Nostradamus speaks of judgment not coming from heaven but from something colder, more mechanical, could he have been warning us about judgment not from divine beings, but from our own creation? Let me share a story that makes this feel even more personal. A friend of mine recently applied for a loan, and without ever speaking to a human being, he was denied based on an algorithm's decision. No explanation, no appeal, just data. That one moment made him feel small, invisible, and powerless. Not because he was judged by a person who misunderstood him, but because he wasn't even seen by a person at all. How many of us have quietly experienced that feeling? How many more will, as we step into this new era where algorithms decide who gets hired, who gets healthcare, or even who gets freedom? As the Buddha once said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. But what happens when the thinking is no longer ours? What happens when that mind is outsourced to something that doesn't feel, doesn't forgive, and doesn't understand context, compassion, or karma? Now, I want to ask you, can a machine, no matter how intelligent, truly understand justice? Can it see the nuance in a life or the intent behind an action? Or are we rushing headfirst into a future where our own humanity is put on trial by tools we designed without soul or wisdom? Some may say this is the natural evolution of technology, but as someone who believes in both spiritual balance and ethical reflection, I urge us not to confuse efficiency with wisdom. Judgment without heart is not justice, it's automation, and automation without awareness is dangerous. So, what's the lesson here? Perhaps it's this: we must not just advance technologically, we must evolve ethically. Let's not build minds more powerful than ours if we ourselves haven't mastered compassion. Let's not hand over judgment to something that cannot feel. And above all, let's remember, power without mindfulness has always led to suffering. So before we ask if machines can judge us, let's ask, are we ready to be judged by something that knows everything but understands nothing? Still watching? That means you're one of the few brave enough to explore the unknown. Type "awakened mind" in the comments if you're ready to uncover what others choose to ignore. Keep watching. What's coming next might change how you see the year 2025 forever. Number 7. Mars Communication Blackout. On January 27, 2025, an extraordinary event unfolded far beyond our skies. Mars, the restless red planet that has fueled human imagination and scientific ambition for generations, slipped behind the burning light of the sun in what astronomers call a solar conjunction, and for nearly 2 weeks, everything we had on Mars, traversers, orbiters and research equipment, fell completely silent. NASA had anticipated the blackout and activated what they call blackout protocols, a contingency plan where no signals are sent to Mars during the conjunction to avoid corruption or miscommunication caused by solar interference, meaning that our most advanced machines, stationed millions of miles away, were left completely on their own. This wasn't a science fiction plot or a dramatized movie script. It was a real, raw reminder of just how vulnerable even our most powerful technologies can be in the face of cosmic forces we still barely understand. When Nostradamus wrote in Century 5, Quatrain 79, of a great setback for the starman, some now wonder if he foresaw this moment, not with telescopes or calculations, but with the poetic intuition of someone deeply attuned to patterns of time, energy and fate. And as strange as that may sound, ask yourself this: what are the odds that centuries ago someone described a scenario eerily similar to modern space communication being brought to a standstill by the sun itself? Now think about how this relates to our everyday lives, because this isn't just about machines on Mars. It's about how we too often operate on the illusion of control. We live in a world driven by constant connection, emails, smartphones, satellites, 24/7 news cycles. But like those rovers in the Martian silence, sometimes we find ourselves in blackouts of our own. Times when nothing seems to respond, when clarity disappears, and when no guidance seems to reach us. It's in those moments that we truly realize how dependent we are not just on technology, but on unseen networks, emotional, spiritual, even cosmic. As the Buddha once said, even as a solid rock is unshaken by the wind, so are the wise unshaken by praise or blame. Perhaps these moments of silence, even on Mars, are opportunities for us to reflect on how we navigate uncertainty, how we respond when support goes quiet, and whether we can stand firm when signals fade. So let me ask you, if machines on Mars must sometimes function without command, can we also learn to trust ourselves when guidance isn't immediately available? Can we develop the inner resilience to navigate our personal blackouts, whether emotional, spiritual, or relational? Nostradamus may have given us metaphors, but life gives us real tests. And this celestial alignment, whether coincidence or prophecy fulfilled, serves as a powerful reminder that, even with all our progress, we remain humble travelers in a universe far larger than we can fully grasp. The lesson here is simple yet profound. In the silence, we must not lose our center. Whether we're staring up at Mars or down at our own hearts, the ability to stay grounded when all communication goes dark is what separates fear from faith and panic from peace. So, the next time things go quiet in your life, ask yourself not what you're lost, but what you're being invited to discover within. Number 8. China vs. US. in Arctic cyber war. Listen closely, because what you're about to explore isn't just a prophecy buried in ancient verses. It's a chilling possibility that's beginning to echo in our world right now. In Century 10, Quatrain 86, Nostradamus wrote, "The young lion will overcome the old eagle on frozen fields. Their agreements will be broken." At first glance, it may sound like poetic riddles from a distant past. But when you look at today's shifting global power structures, this line suddenly feels less like fiction and more like a coded forecast of what's coming. The young lion, seen by many as China rising in both ambition and innovation, and the old eagle, the United States, a long-standing power struggling to maintain its dominance. And the frozen fields? They may not be fields at all in the traditional sense, but rather the digital ice-covered battlegrounds of the Arctic and cyberspace. This isn't the kind of war fought with tanks or rifles. It's a war of servers, satellites, and silent strikes over data, infrastructure, and control. The Arctic is no longer a frozen wasteland to be ignored. It's becoming one of the most coveted strategic zones on Earth. As ice melts due to climate change, previously inaccessible shipping lanes are opening, revealing new paths for trade, military movement, and control of natural resources. At the same time, beneath those icy waters, nations are laying cables. Not just physical ones, but the groundwork for cyber dominance. The 2024 report by the Rand Corporation puts 2025 in the spotlight, calling it a possible turning point in the Arctic power race. Could this be the moment when international agreements start to fracture under pressure? Is it possible we're entering a new kind of Cold War, one that is both literal and metaphorical, where the coldness of the terrain matches the coldness of diplomacy? When Nostradamus wrote about the agreements being broken, was he hinting at the fragile state of today's treaties regarding cyber warfare, space militarization, or Arctic exploration? The line between prediction and reality blurs uncomfortably here. With growing tensions between the US and China, many wonder, are we already watching the prophecy unfold? Could frozen fields also refer to frozen trust between global superpowers? There's growing concern among experts that conflict in the 21st century may begin not with missiles, but with a blackout. A targeted cyber attack, disabling satellites, disrupting GPS, or shutting down critical infrastructure. And when that happens in the Arctic, where environment, economy, and defense intersect, the consequences ripple across the globe. Let's take a step back and ask, how prepared are we for a war we can't see? One that has no front lines, no uniforms, and no televised battles, just silent invasions of information systems, quantum technologies, and AI-driven espionage? Are we protecting the right things? Our data, our communications, our agreements? Or are we too busy guarding borders while the real battlefield moves online and under the ice? And how does trust survive in an era when alliances are fragile and technology outpaces diplomacy? As these questions swirl, the prophecy gains new weight. Perhaps Nostradamus wasn't predicting destruction in the way we often imagine. Perhaps he was warning us about transformation. The shift from traditional warfare to a new era of conflict where knowledge is power and control over cyberspace means control over nations. In this future, the winner may not be the one with the most weapons, but the one with the most access to networks, to minds, to information. So what can we learn from this? First, we must recognize that war in the 21st century is evolving faster than most people realize. It's no longer about land or tanks, it's about data, influence, and control of emerging frontiers like the Arctic. Second, global agreements, no matter how strong they seem, are only as stable as the trust between nations. And third, history, or prophecy, can serve as a mirror, not a map. It doesn't tell us exactly what will happen, but it warns us what could. Now it's your turn to reflect. What kind of future are we building when technology becomes both our shield and our sword? How do we ensure that wisdom keeps pace with power? And more importantly, what role do you play in a world where information is the new battlefield? The lesson is clear. Vigilance must be matched by vision if we're to survive and thrive in this new age of digital Cold Wars. We need more than predictions. We need preparation, awareness, and above all, a commitment to use our growing knowledge for peace, not conflict. Number 9. Super-Volcano threat in Italy. Let me take you into one of the most haunting predictions ever linked to Nostradamus. One that has scientists, geologists, and spiritual thinkers all pausing to ask, what if this time the signs are real? In Century 11, Quatrain 83, Nostradamus wrote, "Beneath the burning hill, the ground will weep." While poetic, this chilling line aligns far too closely with what is happening right now beneath the surface of a place many have never heard of, the Campi Flegrei Super-Volcano in southern Italy. This isn't some Hollywood disaster script. It's a very real, very unstable volcanic caldera just west of Naples, and the signs of distress it's showing in recent years are alarming. Since 1950, the ground has risen by over 110 centimeters, that's more than 3 feet, and in 2024 alone, the area was shaken by over 6,000 micro-earthquakes, a clear signal that pressure is building. Steam vents are opening up, cracks are appearing in roads, and satellite images from LIDAR show the land swelling unnaturally. You might wonder, what does it mean when the ground starts to weep? In ancient terms, it could be a poetic description of lava or gas escaping the earth, but to modern scientists, it's a metaphor made frighteningly literal by these cracks and steam columns, like tears from the earth itself. This place, which Nostradamus referred to cryptically as Napolis, is no minor volcano. It's a supervolcano, and if it erupts, the consequences wouldn't just impact Naples or Italy. They could ripple across the globe. Experts warn that such an eruption could darken the skies over Europe, disrupt global air travel, throw enough ash into the atmosphere to block sunlight, and trigger what's called a volcanic winter, a sudden drop in global temperatures that could damage crops, disturb ecosystems, and impact the economy and food supply worldwide. So I have to ask you, when we hear warnings like this from both science and perhaps ancient prophecy, how seriously should we take them? Is it enough to just monitor and prepare, or do we have a deeper responsibility to understand what these signs, both literal and symbolic, are trying to tell us? And what do you personally feel when you hear that an entire city like Naples is preparing for evacuation drills in 2025? Does it stir fear, disbelief, or something else entirely? Let me tell you a quick story. In 1538, there was a volcanic event in this very region, Monte Nuovo, that rose out of the earth almost overnight. Villagers watched as their land cracked, smoke rose, and in just a week, a whole new mountain was born from fire and ash. If that happened in modern times, it would dominate headlines. But now, something even more dangerous is stirring quietly beneath the surface, and most of the world isn't paying attention. That silence, that complacency, might be what Nostradamus was warning us about all along. So what are the spiritual lessons we can draw from this? First, awareness is power. Not just scientific awareness, but spiritual and emotional awareness too. Second, the earth speaks, whether through earthquakes, steam, or the slow rise of land, and we must learn to listen. Third, impermanence is not just a Buddhist teaching, it's nature's law. Civilizations rise and fall just like mountains. Fourth, humility matters. No matter how advanced we think we are, nature always has the final say. And finally, preparation is not fear, it is wisdom in action. Nostradamus may have spoken in riddles, but the message is clear when we open our minds and hearts to see beyond just facts. The earth is warning us, and the time to pay attention is now. So I'll leave you with this. What will you do with this awareness? Will you let fear guide you, or will you let understanding inspire you to live more consciously, more in tune with the planet that gives us life? Number 10. Silver Collapse and Green Tech Crisis. Let's take a deeper look at Nostradamus' striking words in Century 7, Quatrain 15. The silver thread will break the great bargain. The rich man will weep night and day without ceasing. On the surface, this might sound cryptic or poetic, but when you connect it to what's unfolding in our world today, the warning becomes surprisingly specific and hauntingly relevant. Silver, once coveted by alchemists, royalty, and ancient civilizations, now serves a far more practical, yet no less vital purpose. It is a cornerstone of modern green technologies. From the conductive core of solar panels to the circuitry in electric vehicles and the AI chips powering our digital transformation, silver is everywhere. It's not just a commodity, it's a thread holding together the promise of a sustainable future. And that's where the concern grows, because according to recent reports, including a 2025 forecast by Bloomberg, we're heading straight toward a critical shortage. Mexico, the world's leading silver producer, is experiencing growing water scarcity, political unrest, and environmental limits that are forcing mining operations to slow down or shut entirely. It's like watching the silver thread fray in real time, pulling at the seams of our green energy transition. And here's the sobering part. If silver supply drops dramatically while demand for clean energy tech skyrockets, what happens next? This is where Nostradamus's great bargain begins to unravel. The global agreement, both economic and ideological, that green technology will be our salvation, depends on access to rare, essential materials like silver. When that supply chain weakens, so too does the dream it supports. We may be standing at a cliff's edge where idealism meets hard resource limits. And who pays the price first? It may not be the everyday citizen initially, but the investors, the tech giants and financial markets, the rich men Nostradamus said would weep night and day. Think about how deeply the stock market is tied to the success of electric vehicles, solar innovation, and artificial intelligence. A silver collapse wouldn't just shake mining stocks. It could ripple through global markets, destabilizing what many believe is the economic future. But even more than that, there's an emotional and spiritual lesson here. Have we as a society placed too much faith in technology without fully understanding the fragile web of resources it's built on? Are we racing toward progress while ignoring the Earth's warnings, both literal and metaphorical? And so we're left with a question that doesn't just apply to economists or scientists, but to each of us. How sustainable is our current path, really? In our rush to go green and go faster, are we forgetting that nature sets the limits, not our ambition? For those of us between 30 and 65 who have witnessed firsthand the rapid shifts from analog to digital, fossil fuels to solar power, Maybe this is the moment to pause and reflect, not to fear the future, but to approach it with greater mindfulness. Consider your investments, not just financially, but in how you live, what you consume, and where you place your trust. Diversify your awareness as much as your portfolio. Question how prepared we really are for disruptions, not only in the markets, but in our lifestyles. Should vital materials like silver suddenly disappear from the global stage? Nostradamus may have been speaking from another time, but the message rings true today. Nothing is guaranteed, not even our brightest hopes. It's up to us to ground our visions of progress in wisdom, resilience, and deeper respect for the resources that sustain them. Get by. So, whether you view Nostradamus as a mystic prophet or simply a mirror reflecting timeless truths, his visions challenge us to pause, reflect, and prepare. 2025 may not mark the end, but it could mark a turning point, a time to reconnect with the earth, with each other, and with the deeper wisdom that often gets lost in the noise of progress. If this journey stirred something in you, don't let it end here. Like this video, share it with someone curious about the path ahead, and subscribe to The Journey of Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss our next exploration into the mysteries of the past and the insights they offer for our future. Until next time, stay grounded, stay mindful, and remember, true wisdom isn't in fearing what's to come. It's in learning how to live with clarity, compassion, and courage today.